Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Sarthak Show, where we discuss about tech, career, product and life. And today we have a very special guest, Shabni Das. She is working as a technical program manager at Google. So we'll know everything about what is program management and in depth of that and her life story in this podcast. Thank you so much for joining in for this podcast and taking out time for this. And would love to know more about you. Can you shed a little bit light on that?
Thank you so much, Sarthak, for having me. And Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm sure people are with their friends and family enjoying this day and having the holiday time. I work as a TPM for Google. I'm 1.5 years old in this company. Prior to this, I was working in e-commerce, networking, storage, cybersecurity domain. I started my journey as a developer, moved to Edtech, and finally I'm a TPM. I did my engineering from NIT Warangal. Outside work, I love dancing, traveling, getting involved in some of these eco-restorative and animal rescue and fostering projects. That's about it.
Yeah, awesome. I think a very interesting life journey. And then you mentioned that the bits and pieces that you do outside of your professional work, of your interest with the animals, with the senior citizens and everything. So I think a very, very sweet gesture over that. Yeah. And thank you for mentioning everything about your hobbies and everything. So moving forward on this podcast, I think very first question that audience will have, and me personally wanted to know and curious about, what is this profile? What is technical program manager actually means, or what is this all about?
So technical program manager, it's quite complex role to be precise. Even I had to take some time to understand when I was interested and leaning towards it. But in a layman's language, it is a role which is multifaceted. It is a mid to senior level position which supports organization with product goal. They generally engage with the leadership and engineering team to manage the development and delivery of any product or feature release. So TPMs are basically responsible to initiate any program starting from the conceptualization phase and to strategy creation, to execution, to delivery, to landing, while sharing the overall status of these phases to the leadership or the stakeholders involved. They're also key support role for any risk mitigation that arises. So the primary role of a TPM is to basically bind a cross-functional team to a single purpose. So that also includes coordinating different dependencies that come around this program. And this may entail responsibility such as negotiating a scope or a timeline or roadmap with the business owner, engineering, and stakeholders involved. So this is the high level description of what a TPM does. But based on a program, the TPM may also involve with other non-technical teams such as your marketing, sales, legal, operation, vendor, etc.
Okay, understood. I think again, as you mentioned, it's a multifaceted role and a lot of things on the plate to be done, working with a lot of different stakeholders from engineering to your leaders, and how you can move from start and the zero phase of the product to the one and the end of it. So yeah, I think a very interesting role. But yeah, that's something that you know after joining the job. But what made you actually move into this domain, or what was your interest that made you choose this as a career option?
So thank you so much for that question. I think many folks have asked me this, but let me tell you an honest answer. So when I joined, like at the start of my career, I was mostly into development, automating test frameworks and tools to side of the technology. But at one point, and this was primarily when I was at McAfee, we were having these programs or teams onboarding to new processes and tools. And that's when the leadership handpicked few leads from each of these teams to get trained and then come back and onboard their respective teams. So that was, I believe, was a junction where I started executing few programs at a bigger scale, transitioning the teams to, as I said, to newer processes and methodologies, not just within the engineering scope. So that was also the time when I started partnering more frequently with other teams outside engineering, such as product teams and support team, bootstrapping few processes to basically efficiently deliver the product releases. So that was the turning point. Also, in one of my previous roles, I was running 3 different projects within a program where I really like this cross-functional leadership, partnering with different teams, and also the collaboration that was involved. So for me, working with teams, solving ambiguities and problems around a complex program was something I was leaning towards and getting motivated to. So that was the time I realized that I want to change to a more relevant role and what I'm passionate about. So that's how I became a TPM.
Oh, I think a very interesting journey. And to heart, I was also not aware when I was going to move into product. I was not even aware about this career as option. I started my journey from the same development side, the testing and everything. And then at later point in life, one of my seniors told me this is something that you should try, and you are working in this direction. So why not become a full-fledged PM? And I think it's somewhat relatable that while you are starting in the career, you are not aware about all the options in front of you. And
Exactly.
and by the time you start doing that, you find out, like, this is not something I'm feeling more passionate about, but this is something which I am aligned, or which is aligned with my goals or how I want to work. I think the immediate next thing is, when you know that you want to move into this field, let's say SD tech or any non-tech role, you have to clear the interviews. And to clear the interviews, you know what actually an interview process for that particular role should look like. So what is a typical process of interview look like number of rounds or typical questions that are being asked for a TPM?
Thank you so much for that question. I think that's a very important aspect and knowledge that is required to keep one equipped before they even get started with appearing these interviews. So let me tell you, on a high, like I have kind of appeared for almost, I think, 10 to 15 interviews, and like the recent ones, I would say. And on a high level, most of the interviews have 3 different rounds. One of them would be the screening round. The second one would be around your program management skills. The third one will be technical. And if required, then they will have multiple rounds of program management. But these are 3 different categories where you are assessed on. So with Google, I had appeared for their set of interviews during pandemic. So it was slightly different, but it was more or less of the format they follow. So the 3 rounds that they generally kind of have is, again, as I said, the recruiter screening round that is generally over phone or online. The second one is basically a TPM round, which is again mostly online. The third round, which is the last set of round, is the on-site or virtual on-site, they say. That has around 4 to 5 interviews, kind of packed together. So that's the category they follow. So the first round which I had, which was the recruiter screening round, that's generally of 25 to 30 minutes. And they generally assess on your program management skills, your past experience, and whether that matches with what Google is looking for. Mm-hmm. And lastly, a high level, your culture fit, whether the candidate is kind of complying to. So I think that's the screening. Then comes the TPM round, online TPM round, and that's of 60 minutes. And in that, you're basically assessed on, that's the deep dive round to a level where they assess you on a few experience-based questions or role-based questions. They kind of ask you specific questions around high-level architecture or technical design, although they don't deep dive too much because you just have 60 minutes. So you have to basically cover your program management or role-based knowledge plus your technical knowledge. So it's kind of evenly distributed, and they also want to understand your capability to, or your drive to fit in this role, and what makes you capable or eligible for the role you're interviewing for. So overall, that's the TPM round, which basically touches on all the aspects of program management questions without diving too deep into each. Then comes the last round, which is your on-site or virtual on-site round. Now, this is generally a 4 to 5 rounds. It can be at the on-site or in office of Google, or it can be online. Again, this is divided into 3 rounds. So the first is program management. That could be 2 to 3 rounds where you will be assessed on the role-based knowledge that you carry. Second one is your technical round, which is purely on the domain they are interviewing on, or you were working previously. And the last one is the leadership and Googliness. Now, there are 4 assessment criteria, or I would say attributes, they test you on. The first one is your GCA, or general cognitive ability. Mm-hmm. This is primarily around your problem solving skill, your analytical ability, your ability to handle any situation, like how you resolve ambiguities around a situation or a scenario that they put you into also your strategic thinking and your intellectual curiosity. Like if you're asking questions and not just jumping into answering to the problem statement right away.
Okay.
So that's the first attribute they look at. The second one, which is a role related knowledge, they say, this covers basically the behavioral and hypothetical questions that focuses around you efficiently managing a program from end to end, starting from your initiation, planning, execution, implementation, landing, etc. Right. Also, this includes some of the questions that are asked around that, hey, how did you resolve this ambiguity? Or what happened when you encountered this situation? Now, this can be a real time or an experience that you already had, or it can be a hypothetical. So generally the role related knowledge rounds are hypothetical or experience based, so you can actually prepare your answers accordingly. Then comes the third one, which is your technical knowledge, right? Or the domain knowledge. So now here is when they ask you high level system designs. These are questions that test your knowledge around scalability, latency, and the classic trade-off between speed, cost, quality, risk management, etc. Then the last one, which is basically around leadership and googliness. So this is a round which is a very interesting round that tests your capability to influence without authority. It tests on your capability to get things done, to work in collaboration, to be respectful about the diversity. So the general motto is you put the users first. If you can thrive in chaos, if you can work, in ambiguities, and also ensure that you bring in clarity with that, you can influence teams that you're not directly managing, I would say. So that's precisely what this round is all about.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And as you mentioned, these complicated and I would say somewhat hectic rounds, like you have to assess all these skills and all these areas for a candidate, and then can take up to like a couple of these rounds and all those questions. But for a person, I think if I am interested in cracking those interview rounds, I should know about the resources. And that's the next question that I was coming to.